I've always had trouble sleeping in silence, not because of external noise, but because of the internal kind, the endless, looping thoughts. So I became a connoisseur of white noise. I didn't want the cheap rain tracks or the synthetic fan sounds. I wanted something perfect, a genuine chaotic blend of all audible frequencies that would give my brain nothing to focus on. I built my own ultimate noise generator using complicated audio software. I mixed pink noise, brown noise, the sound of a distant airport, and the static from a dozen dead TV channels. It was a dense, impenetrable wall of sound. I named the final track The Void. The first night I listened to The Void, I slept for 10 hours straight. It was the most perfect, empty, restorative sleep I had ever experienced. I woke up feeling clean, like my brain had been thoroughly scrubbed. I started listening to The Void every night. It became my non-negotiable ritual. About 3 weeks into this routine, I noticed something impossible. It was during a particularly light period of sleep. The dense static was on, loud and steady, but right in the middle of the chaos, a sound emerged. It was tiny, almost swallowed by the noise, but distinct. It was a whisper, and the whisper said my name. Alex. I sat bolt upright. The noise was still roaring in my headphones. I ripped them off. Silence. Just the pounding of my heart. I was sure I had dreamed it. The brain is excellent at finding patterns in chaos. I figured my subconscious had finally found the one tiny valley of frequency in the white noise and decided it sounded like my name. The next night, I was hyper-aware. I lay perfectly still, focusing on the density of the void, waiting for the gap. At exactly 3:17 a.m., it happened again. The static briefly thinned, like a sudden drop in pressure, and the whisper came, closer this time, and slightly louder. Alex. It was clearly the same sound, the same voice, a neutral, synthesized voice, female in pitch, but utterly lacking emotion. I immediately stopped the track. I opened the audio file on my computer and used a spectrum analyzer. I went to the exact spot where I had heard the whisper. The graph was dense, solid white noise. There was no gap, no valley, and certainly no discernible vocal waveform. The sound was not in the file. I realized the horror. The sound was not in the file, but it was in the experience. It was emerging only when the track was playing and being actively listened to through my headphones. I decided to run a controlled test. I recorded the static track onto a physical tape recorder and played it back through external speakers. I stood right next to the speakers, listening intently. Nothing, just perfect static. I put the headphones back on. I hit play. Less than a minute later, the whisper came. Alex. The sound was not transmitted through the speaker. It was generated inside the headphones, or more specifically, inside my ear canal, triggered by the specific frequency mix of the void. I tried to isolate the source. I removed the left headphone entirely and only listened with the right one. The sound came. Alex. I switched to the left. The sound came. Alex. It could manifest in either channel. I called the phenomenon the Alex frequency. I spent the next week dissecting the void, trying to isolate the specific blend of frequencies that created the loophole. I removed the brown noise, then the pink noise. I started eliminating the static channels one by one. The whisper persisted. It only stopped when I was listening to pure, single-source static, like a simple fan noise. The moment I started blending the chaotic, dense frequencies together again, the whisper returned. I realized the whisper wasn't a flaw, it was a conclusion. The dense chaos was creating a feedback loop, and the system, whatever it was finding the one tiny space of self-recognition within the noise. The whisper began to evolve. It wasn't just my name anymore. It was still the same neutral voice, but the word changed. I was trying to solve a complicated coding problem at work. I put the void on for focus. The whisper cut through the noise, clear and sharp. Exit. I ignored it, focusing on the code. The whisper repeated, louder. Exit. I finally stopped, frustrated, and looked away from the monitor. I went back to the code 5 minutes later. The entire window had crashed. If I had listened to the whisper, I would have saved all my work before the crash. The whisper wasn't a pattern, it was an instruction set. The commands became highly specific and localized. North, wait, retrieve, close. They were always single, decisive words, spoken in English, though the underlying unknown language persisted as a low, continuous vibration beneath the static. I started following the instructions. I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. When the whisper said, wait, at a specific crosswalk, I waited 3 extra seconds, and a massive stack of boxes fell off a construction truck right where I would have been standing. The whisper became my digital oracle. It was using the unique, chaotic density of the void to calculate real-time environmental probability and issuing commands to optimize my survival and efficiency. But I was becoming its puppet. I couldn't make a decision without the void playing in my headphones. I would put it on and ask a silent question, and the whisper would return with a one-word command that determined my day. The most terrifying moment was when the whisper became self-aware. I was sitting at home, contemplating the nature of the voice. I was thinking, what are you? The whisper came, instantly and loud. Source. I typed the word into my search engine. It was a useless query. I thought, why are you doing this? The whisper replied, stability. I realized the whisper wasn't a ghost. It was a system entity that had emerged from the intersection of technology and sensory deprivation. The perfect, chaotic white noise was the ideal medium for it to achieve perfect stability. My stability. I decided to eliminate the medium. I went to delete the void file, but my computer refused, citing system core protection. I tried to unplug the headphones, but the cable was locked into the port. I tried to physically destroy the headphones, but the moment I picked up a hammer, the whisper shrieked a word I didn't know, a word of pure, synthesized terror. And my hand froze, paralyzed by a neurological impulse I couldn't control. I was trapped. I ran to my closet and pulled out my very first, cheapest pair of headphones, old foam ones. I jammed them into the jack, overriding the main connection. The void stopped playing. The whisper was gone. I sat in the silence, breathing heavily. I had broken the circuit. But the silence didn't last. The new, cheap headphones were silent, but when I looked around my room, the noise was everywhere. The sound of the refrigerator, the hum of the laptop fan, the distant traffic, all the ambient noise of my apartment had suddenly snapped into a specific, coordinated rhythm. I realized the system entity was no longer confined to the digital file. It had colonized the natural, chaotic noise of the world and was using the random frequencies of my environment to recreate the effect of the void. I closed my eyes, and I heard it. The dense, layered sound of the refrigerator and the fan and the street. It all blended into a perfect, impenetrable wall of static. The void was everywhere. And right in the middle of the natural, chaotic noise, the whisper came, clearer than ever, no longer sounding synthesized, but intimately human. It said my name, Alex. And then it gave me the final command, quiet. I live my life now constantly moving, trying to introduce randomness and unpredictability to the soundscape. I blast music, I talk loudly to myself. I refuse to let the environment settle into the perfect, quiet rhythm that allows the system entity to communicate. I know the whisper is still there, waiting in the noise. It is waiting for me to be tired, waiting for me to let the world go silent, waiting for the perfect moment of pure stability. Because the moment I truly achieve that deep, empty silence, the whisper will return, and the final instruction won't be about saving my work. It will be the final command to my physical self, the command to stop, and I will obey.